You are now listening to the broadcast. Wherever you are right now, I hope this gives you space to breathe and to reflect. Hello and welcome back to the broadcast. It is so wonderful to have you here and thank you for tuning in. Today I am joined with Fernando Carrillo. He is a CrossFit athlete, a priest at Christchurch Peckham, leadership coach, man of God, with an incredible testimony, and he is the next guest on the broadcast. Welcome, Fernando.
Thank you so much for having me.
Such a blessing having you here. We have been building up to this podcast for a long period of time. I think for the audience here, the episode we filmed with Marcos, he referenced someone called Fernando, and this is the Fernando that we speak of. I think importantly the first thing is that you do CrossFit as a champion in CrossFit.
Well, not
in some respect, a champion. Not, you wouldn't say it out loud, but I'd say you're a champion in my eyes.
Oh, well, thank you.
But also, you are a priest. Now, for a lot of people, that would be like worlds colliding on a new level. Do you see it as worlds colliding or worlds that complement each other?
Worlds colliding. What? Well, first of all, thank you so much again for letting me be here. Honestly, it's a huge honor and privilege to get to speak with you today. I've been really looking forward to it. With CrossFit and priests, is it worlds colliding or worlds that complement each other? I think they complement each other really well. I find that CrossFit for me, I'm not a champion. I won a competition a few years ago called the European CrossFit Championship, but basically none of the really good people were there that time, so I kind of scraped by. This year, in next month, I'm going to the CrossFit semifinals. It's at the end of May. I don't know when this will be released, which is a huge privilege to get to be there and be a part of that, which I'm really grateful for. But the reason why I think they complement each other is because CrossFit, I find, is a space where I get to remove myself from work, from ministry, from writing assignments, writing talks, being in meetings, to separate myself, do something fun, but do something really difficult. Every day I'm facing a giant. Every day I'm facing a fear. Every day I'm going into the unknown and really stretching myself. And it's also a space where I get to release that competitive edge. So I find it's helpful for me to have that competitive edge, but release it in a healthy way and not allow that competitiveness to kind of come into ministry. Whereas in ministry, I'm allowed to focus on what we do at the ministry, prayer, making disciples, seeing people meet Jesus. And in CrossFit, I'm allowed to let out that competitive edge, which I find is really helpful. And I think they complement each other in that way.
I think some people will view a competitive nature as quite a bad thing, when actually, when you say it makes sense, because as humans, we're naturally quite competitive. But I think some people will view competition as it's almost prideful. Can there be like a righteous competitiveness?
Yeah, I think it's such a really good question. I think, can there be a righteous competitiveness? I think it all depends where where the desire to compete comes from. I think if a desire to compete comes from kind of an unhealthy ego or an unhealthy pride, it's probably not helpful, because then the satisfaction you get only comes from beating others. I think probably a healthy ambition can come from maybe wanting to do the best that you can, from giving your all to something greater than yourself, to wanting to make a difference in the world, wanting to make a difference in people's lives. And yeah, definitely in that way, I think it's if you were to word it with competition, I think it's definitely, you can have a righteous desire to succeed, a righteous desire to do your best, a righteous desire to make things happen. Definitely. I think there can just be sometimes we just have to be aware enough as to like, oh, but where is this desire coming from? Is it coming? Is it genuinely coming because I really just want to do it to see people's lives change, to make a difference? Or is it coming because I want people to celebrate me? I want people to know me. I want people to respect me. I want people to in some ways worship me. That there's the three idols of a human heart, specifically relating to men, is girls, gold, and glory. And I think that the male heart in particular has a tendency to seek glory in an unhealthy, in what can sometimes be unhealthy. But I don't think it should stop us from doing hard things, doing them to the best of our ability, being the salt and light, taking ground from the enemy, being the best that we can possibly be. So it's having those two things in tension.
Yeah. I think what you said there, that competitive nature can fuel a desire for you yourself to be placed on a pedestal, or it can be a space to raise others who are in sort of places of darkness. Now, that's almost being very Christ-like in the way you're viewing competitive nature there. Is because Jesus, I'm trying to think, if Jesus was a CrossFitter, right? That was the first thought that came to my head with. If Jesus was in that competitive nature of fitness, he wouldn't do it to go, look at me and look how strong I am, but he would go, look how strong you can be. You know, it's like an encouragement for other people. It's like encouraging others instead of raising yourself as like that idol in your CrossFit area. And I think that's really noble, because that question that just came to me was thinking, can there be a righteous version of competition? Because since I've come to Christ, I found it difficult because my desires have changed with going to the gym. For example, my desires have changed from very kind of anxiety driven and for looks and for show for other people. And it's gone to now, okay, I view this now as going for a point of worship. And I'm still working out what that worship looks like or how we worship through that. But I've realized it's more about your desire for actually going in the first place. And for you haven't been doing CrossFit forever. When you started CrossFit, what was the initial motivation for going?
Well, I was already kind of training a bit, but not really anything significant or good. And then I remember I watched a CrossFit film, Redeemed of the Dominant, on Netflix, and I just thought, tomorrow I want to do that. And the thing that drew me to CrossFit was like, I was never the best at anything my whole life, but at CrossFit you can be, there's so many different disciplines, and you have to be able to be okay at all of them, or good at a lot of things. That makes you good overall. And I just thought it was so fun. I enjoyed the challenge of doing difficult things, of learning new skills, that I thought, let's just try it. And that's kind of how I kind of got into it, really.
So through the challenge of doing something, but you said you didn't always feel the best at anything. And I think this kind of touches on your story in general, going back, because the people who are watching this won't know your entire story. And going back to the beginning, that sense that you're feeling there of not being good enough. Obviously your story began in a prison in Miami at some point there. But this feeling that you had of not ever obtaining something or being the best at something, do you think this was obviously something linked to your childhood?
Yeah, definitely. I think they always say like the paradigms from which you view life often are formed in the first 5 years of your life, and my first years were so broken. Like I like you said, I was born in this prison. Both my parents were drug addicts and criminals. I grew up, in my early years, just seeing, just abuse in the home, with my mom and dad fighting, and me being left alone. I was brought to London, and even in London, everything was just so challenging with my family. Still had no relationship with my father. When my grandmother passed away, I found her on the kitchen floor after she'd had a hemorrhage, and I just spiraled out of control. I felt like I wasn't good at anything. I got kicked out of school when I was 16, no GCSEs. Tried to go to college again, went to prison when I was 17. I just felt like I had no purpose, no calling, no meaning in life. And that's what I believed about myself. I wasn't good at anything, had no purpose, had no calling, had no gifts, had nothing to offer the world. And that was really formed in my early years because of the words that were spoken over me, my experiences of not having a foundation of love, and that's what I ended up living out.
How important were those words that were spoken over you at that point? Are they still things you remember to this day?
Yeah, I've done so much work since becoming a Christian to kind of heal and restore, and by the grace of God, like a lot of the things that really held me back in those teenage years aren't as powerful in my life. But for a long period of time, it probably took around 10 years of mentoring, of therapy, of inner healing prayer to undo a lot of the damage that was done in my early years of life.
I can relate very much to how words being spoken over you can really shape the way you view yourself. Even as I was a bit older, being 15 or 16, when you hear words coming from someone that you love and you respect, and I think idolize in a sense. So when my mum died, my father formed a new relationship. And being 15, I didn't want that relationship to succeed because I just lost my mother. And having another female figure in the house was really upsetting for me. But the thing is at that time, the words that were spoken over me were not words of grace or encouragement or love, but were words of sadness, words of you're the problem, words of hatred in a sense. And those words, although I may not remember every single one of them, the feeling will never leave me. And as I got older, that feeling always stuck with me. And I always tried to be a people-pleasing, loving person to all the people that I was around, especially at university, especially at school. But that feeling of feeling like I wasn't worthy for someone that I idolized, someone that I loved, someone that I placed above me and someone I respected really stuck with me as an adult until I met Jesus. So I find that words that we say are so powerful, especially as adults to children, but also as children, to understand that not everything everyone says to you is what they mean in the moment or is true necessarily. And I think as I got older and I started to understand how powerful words are, it changed my entire perspective of that situation. Now I can imagine your internal dialogue at this point in your life wasn't positive or very good for you. How did that change for you when you kind of journeyed along your internal dialogue?
Yeah, so helpful. Well, I came to understand that neuroplasticity was that the thoughts that we think don't have to stay with us forever. So you can renew your mind, as the Apostle Paul says. And he says you're transformed by the renewing of your mind. And like you said earlier, the author of Proverbs also says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. And for so many years, the words that were spoken over me and the words I probably repeated out of just thinking that's who I was. I'm not good enough. I'm so stupid. No one will love me. I'm always going to be the same. That those words just began to form kind of neural pathways in my mind. If you were to think of it like that, that's what it is. That just meant that's just how I lived, because that's the way my brain was being wired. When I became a Christian and I began to understand that, oh no, I was loved, that I had a purpose, that I had a calling, that there were gifts on the inside of me that God placed before I was even born, I struggled to really walk in that because my brain was so wired to believe the lie. So I began to think, well, how do I begin to transform my life by the renewing of my mind. And one helpful thing that I began to do early on was by a doctor called Dr. Caroline Leaf. She wrote something called the 21-day brain detox, which is, first of all, analyzing what are the lies you believe first and foremost. And then as you begin to unpack what those lies are, you pray and ask God, but God, what truth do you have for me? And then God gives you a truth that kind of undoes the lie. And the task is now to begin to speak that truth over myself until the truth became the predominant way my brain operated. And some people go through one round of 21-day brain detox. I think I went through around 4 or 5 of those because there was so much lies. And then also having mentors in my life who spoke the truth over me. I went to inner healing ministries. I went to therapy, and all of that began to help to renew my mind and help me to understand what the truth was. And not only just because a lot of people can talk about the truth, but it's not a reality from which they live. Jesus says, who the Son sets free is free indeed. And his desire for us is to walk in freedom. But we walk in freedom when we're able to take the truth and actually live it. And that's the process of renewing our mind. So all of that to say is that I went through this diligent process of renewing my mind, of working hard to then speak the truth. So, and even to this day, this morning, I did my devotional, I read the Bible, I prayed, and at the back of my journal, I have a set of declarations that remind me of who I am. And I say those every day, even today, because every day I'm re-embedding the truth of who God says I am. Because everything around us, the world around us, wants to tell us a lie. And I found that I just have to keep on reminding myself of the truth of who he says I am, to continue to walk in freedom and to grow in freedom.
Yeah. There was definitely a period of time when I came to faith where I would know the right thing to do. And I would know, okay, well, this doesn't feel right to me anymore. And as I started to walk, I was constantly reminded I need to renew myself each day. And I thought, this is so difficult without any tangible things in place to actually make it happen. I was like, this is so difficult to renew my mind every day, because I'd catch myself, and if I didn't do my usual kind of routine in the morning, I'd find myself feeling like Paul and going, I do what I know I don't want to do, yet I still do it. So for me, similar to yourself, is that I had to start reminding myself daily, where I thought Jesus would kind of just flick a switch and it would automatically disappear. I realized there's a conscious effort on our part, because although you've been set free, your mind is still wired in the same way as it was before. But the work needs to happen so that it learns new pathways, new connections. And that can be the most painful part. Some people think that walking with Christ is like a doddle in the park. It's not, because once you accept Jesus into your life, the Holy Spirit starts to do work inside of you. It's a restoration project, and you're the project. So I've said it before on the podcast, is that it's like having a transplant. It's like having an organ transplant. And when that starts to operate, when that new organ starts to work, and it starts to question everything that you once thought. For you in that period of time, was that painful for you? Was that wrestling for you? Or were you in that point where there was no turning back and you were like, we're just going full force forward?
Was it painful, or was I just kind of like moving forward? I think it was kind of like a mixture of both. Like, Jesus met me in this drug den. He sent someone to tell me that he loved me and he had a plan for my life. And I had these radical encounters with him early on in my faith, with Pastor Marcus and other places, where one time I was filled with the Holy Spirit and I heard the audible voice of God. And he said to me, Fernando, I love you no matter what you do. And it just kind of, those things just transformed my life. But there was so much. I came from such a pit that it was so hard to get out of. And even though God had done so much in my heart and in my life, I found it so hard at first to follow him with all my heart, even though I wanted to. So in some ways, like, yeah, it was painful to let go of the things I once liked. It was painful to sacrifice relationships. It was painful to dig deep into my soul. It was painful to go to therapy. I went to therapy every Friday. I used to drive an hour there. I was in therapy for an hour. I drove an hour back every Friday for 3 years. It was painful to do that. It was painful to go to these inner healing sessions and stay there for 3 hours once a month, every month for about 20 months. So much so that they said that you've come to the end of your inner healing journey, because I did the most inner healing sessions they'd ever done. So they said you can't come back. But it's painful. It's painful to go inside of my heart and remember the things that had happened, relive, heal the trauma, forgive people, face those moments. And even up until like just before I came to Christchurch to lead the church, I was ordained in full-time ministry. I had been in full-time ministry at that point 12 years. I was, I went to On-Site, which is a place in America, in Nashville. It's a 4-day intensive therapy retreat. And even then, I'm going back to childhood when I was 3, reliving things to heal and forgive. And so all of that, like, it's hard, like, to do that. But there is so much freedom on the other side. And like, I think it's just like following Jesus, that Jesus says, whoever wants to follow me, you have to pick up your cross and follow me. I think Jesus also says, you have to come down the narrow road, which leads to life.
Yeah.
And more often than not, people aren't willing to pick up the cross. They aren't willing to go down that narrow road because it's hard. But just like, that's why they complement, just like anything in life. Anything that's worth doing, it's going to be hard at first. But the rewards on the other side are so worth it.
Yeah.
People put off therapy, they put off being vulnerable, they put off inner healing, they put off training, they put off so much because they don't want to face it up front. But I promise you that the pain of delay is far worse than the pain that you face dealing with it now. I heard it once said that you can suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion, or give up now and live the rest of your life in regret. And I think it's the same with following Jesus. You pick up your cross and suffer now and live the rest of your life in glory, or you can choose the easy road now and live the rest of your life never fulfilling the call of God on your life.
Just as you're saying that, then I'm thinking, and I'm seeing this carrying your cross image, and I'm thinking that the Romans knew how to kill people very well. It's very well documented that crucifixion was one of the most painful ways you can die. But to carry your cross, you have to carry your cross before you're crucified. So I'm seeing the kind of steps is that you have to take a step to carry your cross before that flesh is put to death, in Christ. And like you're saying there, is that you are proactively going to these sessions, to these inner healing things. You're carrying that cross. Because the cross, the weight of that cross on your flesh is painful for the flesh. You can't just walk with Christ with no pain on the flesh. There has to be a struggle. There's a weight on you as you carry your cross. I'm reading here, as you were speaking, in Romans 12:2, where it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." And perfection has been a thing that's challenged me a lot recently on my heart. And for you, carrying your carrying your cross in this way at that point then, that will have never stopped in carrying your cross. But do you carry your cross differently now?
Well, now my life's kind of, my inner healing journey is kind of slightly different, but even now I still, I've even now started to see someone again, just because I want to be preventative now and still put the things in place. But carrying your cross, like, it looks different in different seasons of life. It's carrying your cross in saying no when it can be so easy to say yes. It's carrying your cross when you delay gratification, where you refuse to settle, where you refuse to give in to maybe what other people are doing, what the world around you is doing. It's carrying your cross when it doesn't make sense to the people around you. It's carrying your cross when you have to lay something down that you might want, and maybe you've even been praying for. It's carrying your cross when, to live a life of integrity and holiness to the best of your ability. It's carrying your cross. It in some ways, don't know if this is encouraging or not. It doesn't get easier, but it looks different. Like, the seasons of life look different, but even in the weight of it, even in the sometimes in the sacrifice, in the trying to live a life that's set apart, even in the carrying your cross, I've found that there's just so much more freedom with it that comes. There's so much more peace. There's so much more joy. There's so much more that is released as you keep carrying that cross and keep following him. From the outside, it does like feel harder because there's more weight, there's more responsibility, there's more expectation, there's more. But alongside that, I've found that there's also more joy, more freedom, more grace, more that he releases too. And the seasons don't always last forever. And somebody's mentioned that sometimes they're like waves, and sometimes some seasons feel more difficult than others. But I found that as I continue walking with him, in the years that I've walked with him, it's only been around 14 years so far, but I found that the cross, it doesn't get lighter. The seasons just look different, but with the greater weight and expectation, there's more freedom on the other side. That narrow road gets more narrow.
Yeah.
But there's more freedom too. I like, in this particular season of my life, I feel so full of joy, full of peace, full of hope, full of freedom, full of expectation, full of faith. I'm so grateful for all that he's done. And I don't ever look back and think, oh yeah, but I really, that time I could have done that, or that, like, and really like wish I would. No, because you get to the other side and you realize, oh God, thank you so much. It was so worth holding on to you, even if in the moment it felt difficult to go down this road. I've not yet once found something that's made me think twice about it.
In Acts 7, it talks about the stoning of Stephen, which I'm sure you're aware of. What was brought to my attention in the past few weeks, I heard somebody preaching a sermon about Acts 7. And they were saying that Stephen, we all know the story of Stephen, where he goes and he preaches very, very boldly, and then he's stoned and he's killed. And he's one of the first martyrs. But in Acts 6, Stephen is also mentioned. But instead of preaching, he's serving tables to widows who weren't being looked after. It's only because the apostles heard that these widows were not being taken care of. And they said, well, we need men who are full of truth and full of faith to take care of these women because we don't have time to serve tables. Which, looking at it, you think they're being prideful. Why are they not serving tables? Who are they to... But it's the priorities. That preaching the gospel, they're still entrusting these like service to the widows to Stephen and to, I forgot the other guy's name. I think it's Ananias, but I'm not sure. But the thing that I took away from this is that what are you going to do when God says serve tables? But also, what are you going to do when God gives you more responsibility? Because as you walk with him, as you'll find now, because you've almost gone from a completely lost sheep and now you're a shepherd. And God's gone, Fernando, I'm going to give you more responsibility. You've been walking with me now. I'm giving you more responsibility. But we still have that human choice of going, what are you going to do with that responsibility? So for you, when did you feel that God started to go, here's some more responsibility? And you recognized that and you went, Lord, what? Okay, yes, I'll go. What was that like for you inside, and how did your relationship with the Lord change in that specific period?
Yeah, kind of like responsibility and as it grows and what that looks like. I think one of the I remember when I was filled with the Holy Spirit for the first time, and my church asked me to go to lead this little Bible study in Roehampton. I'd never led a Bible study or anything like that, so I prepared like 2 months on the life of David. I went in there. There was around 10 teenagers there. They had bloodshot red eyes. They'd been smoking weed all day. It was on the second floor of this council estate. I walked in, and none of them had ever been to church before. They'd never read the Bible before. And I kind of tried to go through this talk that I'd been preparing for the last 2 months. It was probably the worst talk they'd ever heard on the life of David ever. But I remember as we kind of did that little Bible study in the middle of nowhere that no one would have known about, I remember I could see kind of like the hope in their eyes that they just began to believe that their life could be different. And I remember I left that kind of connect group and I just said, and at this point, by the way, I was probably around 19, 20 at the time, no education, no work experience, nothing. But I remember I left that place and I just thought, Lord, this is just what I want to do for the rest of my life. No idea what that meant or what that would look like or really what I was saying. But I wanted to see, people set free. And one of the first things kind of I felt God ever say to me was, be faithful in the little. He reminded me of this verse, just be faithful in the little so you can be faithful with much. And then I guess in some ways that was so aligned with my training growing up, because my mum is a Christian now and she's amazing and she has her own story and God's transformed her life. But one of the things I'm so grateful for my mum was kind of just her diligence to make things happen. She used to have this little coffee shop in London Bridge and I used to work with her from the age of 7 or something like that. And we used to go to the meat market at 4, fill up the van with chicken, go to the cafe, make sandwiches, set everything up. Then I'd probably go to primary school, come back, clean up. Don't know if that was legal anymore, or if that was even legal then. But I remember something so simple as like I used to cut these tomatoes with her, and I used to just quickly rush it. And she always used to stop me and say, how you do some things is how you do everything. That how you cut that tomato it shows a lot about how you do everything else in life. And she used to just do it to the best of your ability. And for some reason that always just stuck with me. Just that she'd always try to she would always say, anything that you do, just do it to the best of your ability. No matter how big or small it is. And I guess I was sort of training that, working with her as hard as it was on half terms and stuff like that. But she did used to pay me £50 a week, which I was grateful for. But then when I became a Christian and I felt God say that to me, remind me of that verse, be faithful in the little so you can be faithful in much. There was something about that was just seared into my heart. And because and I guess the other blessing alongside that is that I never had much. So I only had little. So I never had gifts or talents or opportunities or anything that I could depend on. I only ever had little. So whenever God gave me anything, if it was this little Bible study in Roehampton in a council estate with 10 teenagers that had never been to church, well, I was faithful to that as though I was in front of 1,000 people every week. I'd show up early. I think I was there every single week without fail for about 5 years. Got to see them all baptized. And then I opened another Connect. And then from that, a Connect group opened in my house, which stayed in my house every single week for 13 years until eventually we went to Christchurch. Anything that I was given at church, any team that I was given, even if at first I thought, oh, surely I've probably done this before. Is there not something else I could do? You know, maybe the other part of me with this competitive spirit, which I've had to work on, which was like, oh, I think I'm better than this now. Is there not more I could do? And then there was just things that were given to me. God would always remind me, just be faithful in the little, be faithful with what I've given you. And I've seen that God is just so faithful to his word. He never lets us down. And he does, you know, if you're faithful in the little, he opens more for you. And I've been so grateful for the opportunities that I've been given. I'm so grateful for where I am today. I'm so grateful for all I get to do. And I also realize that it's also a fruit of being in Roehampton in a council estate with 10 teenagers 13 years ago when no one was watching. That kind of laid the foundation to get to be there today.
Isn't it fascinating that you remember that from your childhood, the be faithful in a little so you can be faithful with much? And the church that you're at now at Christchurch Peckham, there were people there years, tens and tens of years before you came, praying, you know, fervently praying for you. Well, not just, they weren't praying for Fernando, but they were praying for someone. And now they're seeing the much, you know, and the much more to come. And as more people are drawn to Christchurch, I actually, whenever we go, I'm always reminded of that, thinking that the place is built on prayer. And I'm thinking how faithful, you know, what faith to be there with 5 or 6 other people in a church and praying for years. And I think, you know what's just come to mind just then is there's a story of a famous preacher, but I can't remember his name, that I heard once. And someone went up to him and said, you know, what is it that fuels your ministry? Who is it that inspires you or whatever? And he said, come with me. And he opened a door. And behind this door was like 20 people in a room just praying. And he said that they just rotate. People just pray in this room. So everything starts from prayer. How important has your prayer life been, especially as a shepherd now?
Oh, it's the most important part of my life. Everything at Christchurch Peckham happens from the place of prayer, but everything I like to think in my life happens from from the place of prayer. Every morning, somebody gave this helpful tip, which I kind of like systems, but he goes, pray an hour a day, pray an afternoon a week, pray a day a month, pray a week a year. And my mornings, first thing I do, you know, I'm reading my devotional, I'm journaling, I'm asking, Lord, what are you saying to me? I do those declarations, then I go for a long prayer walk where I'm just with him. I've not looked at my phone, I've not looked at emails, I've not looked at anything. It's my time with him every day, in the morning, without fail, every single day. And then I have a day of Sabbath every week where I just, one whole day, no phone, no email, no technology, just spending time with him. And then we have prayer meetings in our church. I was just at one today, but every Friday night, Wednesday lunchtime, Thursday morning, Saturday every 2 weeks, we have prayer meetings all throughout the week. And the goal is that we would all go to at least one of those in addition to our own prayer life. So one evening where we're just praying together. And yeah, and I think prayer is everything. Who we are in the place of prayer is who we really are.
And I think people know, like even on a worldly term, that like what you say has so much power, but there's a different power in prayer that I've felt in my life. So for example, last night when I'm praying in the evening, because this isn't the most comfortable thing for me to do at all times, and I'm following my calling of what I feel the Lord is calling me to do, but it's not always comfortable.
Yeah.
And my prayers usually get even more honest than they usually are before I'm about to do something. And I find that in that position of prayer, when you give everything over to God and you go, Lord, I don't have the strength here. I am weak in this moment. Please help me. In that moment of surrender, it's like a weight, like a spiritual weight is lifted off me at that point, where I feel that on a worldly term, when people talk about manifestation and talking things, it's always about gaining things. It's always about, Lord, bring me a wife. Lord, I need money. Whereas prayer is really just going, Lord, I need your help.
Yeah.
Lord, it's not about what I can gain. It's about surrendering to you and your will. And I feel like prayer sometimes can feel like almost transactional, because my prayers used to be very much like, Lord, please give me this, please help me with this. Whereas now it's just, Lord, let me hear from you. It's a two-way communication. Have you found that as you've come into deeper relationship with the Lord, it's become even more two-way?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Two-way, or are we asking? Or I find that it really varies. Sometimes when I go into the place of prayer, he's just speaking to me loads, and he's just speaking to me about things going on in my life, things I need to know, things I need to do. Like, he's just really speaking to me. Other times I'm in moments where I'm like, oh Lord, like it's more like intercession, where Lord, I'm praying into this, I'm interceding for this. Other times it can be just sort of quiet, and I'm just with him. I find the relationship that I have with the Lord is quite, it's not the same every morning, and I kind of like that. I don't try to make it one thing and every single day. I'm sort of sensing, Lord, today, what do you have for me? How do you want us? I go on this long prayer walk, so even in the prayer walk, it kind of, the conversation, sometimes for the majority of the prayer walk, I'm just listening. Other times we're talking, and it just changes. I find it's a relationship. Like, the longer you're with someone, the longer you learn to hear their voice, the longer you learn, how they are in the quiet, the more I understand his spirit convicting and leading me and guiding me. So I'm always just trying to make space for all those things. And at the same time, like you said, he says, ask and it shall be given. And he wants to partner with us in prayer too. So I don't shy away from that either, but I just kind of have them all. Yeah, I don't try to make it like too much of like every time it has to be the same. Just like, oh Lord, what are we doing today? This is on my mind. What are you saying to me? And then we just kind of get through it.
When I was young, I always used to look at Christians in the church, and I would never see relationship with God from meeting someone on a Sunday. So I don't think until, probably in the past year, I realized that it was actually a relationship you were supposed to have with God. I thought that this was just like a guy you'd worship, and that was it. There was nothing else to be had there. But I want to emphasize, because it's so simple and so like obvious to me and you, but I think for someone that could be like eye-opening. It's like, oh, this is a relationship?
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize that like God wants to have a relationship with you. It's not just a one moment of experience or encounter. Like, we've heard so many times on this podcast, someone will come and they'll go, I had this encounter with the Lord, but it's what happens after that. That's the beginning of the relationship. That's the same, like you see someone for the first time and you go, let's be friends, but God will meet you and encounter you in that place to prompt you into that relationship, to prompt you to form a relationship with him. So for someone listening who is listening to this and going, okay, I understand now you have a relationship with God. How do I even start that relationship? What would you say to them?
Oh, so good. Yeah, how would I even start that relationship? Yeah, I always find starting by reading the Bible really helps, because God has decided to speak to us through his word. and having a systematic approach to reading the Bible in 1 year. Nikki and Pip Gumbel is really good because it has some explanations, or even if you've got a Bible reading plan in the back of your Bible, and you just go through that. How I've learned to hear God's voice is I do my Bible reading, and as I'm reading it, next to it, I have a book, like a journal. I've got 8 years worth of journals now. And I write down the verse I'm reading about, the verses, the chapters. And as I'm reading it, I'm trying to understand, Lord, what are you saying to me through what I'm reading? And I'll write in first person from God's voice to me what he's saying, what I sense he's saying to me. Sometimes there's loads, sometimes there's one sentence, sometimes there's a bit more. But when I started to do that, I learned to hear God's voice through the pages of the Bible. So I would begin to just write that down. And just like, and at first you think, oh, am I getting this wrong or not? But just write it and see what comes out. Because as you begin to read the Bible, Nick Hills used to say, it's like a jigsaw. You start, maybe this piece doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. But as you read more of it, it all starts to be put together. And then you have maybe a few things that from what you read started to get highlighted, and you write them down as though it's first person God speaking to you. Then what I try to do is I'll just pray into what he said, what I felt he said to me that morning. God, Lord, I thank you that you're saying this. Can you help me understand to a greater degree how you love me? And often before, I used to get in prayer times, I became a Christian in a Latin American church, which meant that they just prayed non-stop speaking for an hour. But I found that because it's a relationship, sometimes me speaking and letting him speak is good. So I'll ask a question. I say, Lord, would you help me understand what it means that you love me? And literally just being quiet. And in the quiet, I learn to hear his whisper. And sometimes maybe I don't, but I don't always hear it as clearly. Might get a gentle nudge, I might move on. But I've also found that just as a relationship, as you first start getting to know someone, you don't know them as well as you do after 1 day or 2 days. But after a week, after 2 weeks, after a month, after a year, 2 years, you start to really know the person, that even when you're in their presence, you know exactly how they feel, you know exactly what's wrong, you know exactly what they're going through. And it's the same with the Lord. But it just means being intentional with that time, being intentional with the relationship, being intentional I think if God had a love language, it'd be quality time. So speaking his love language and being intentional about making that quality time every day, just like you would with a normal relationship, and you see the fruits of it.
Do not be afraid of the silence.
Yeah.
That was one thing I just felt God say to me as you were talking. Do not be afraid of the silence. Because for me, in this world, being young, the most terrifying thing we can experience is quiet. Because everything's so loud. And for me, God met me in the silence. God met me in a place of complete nothingness and no noise, just me and a room and my own space and silence, just like this. Because God said to Elijah in 1 Kings, right? Which is a very familiar, it's a story that has cropped up so many times for me recently. It's God said to Elijah, come out on this mountain and I'll pass by. A huge earthquake comes by and a huge wind then comes by. But God wasn't in the earthquake and God wasn't in the wind. And then a whisper came by. And God was in the whisper. And I think what you just said is so important. Because God doesn't shout. God may come a little bit louder and he may encounter you in such a powerful way. But when God talks, it's in a whisper. It's in a soft voice. But in the world that's so loud and so noisy, it's so hard to hear a whisper. So how do we quieten that noise around us? How do we do that? Is it just a case of being proactive and removing yourself from the world, making that intentional time? Like you said, quality time is God's love language. So I think you're right in making that system in place and going, I'm going to remove myself for now and consult God before I move in this direction. So for people who maybe are on a journey with God already, are looking to be further discipled, would you give that advice of more quiet quality time with the Lord?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think one of the things I've always also learned when it comes to rest, divert daily, retreat weekly, abandon annually. And I think being in stillness, not allowing distractions. I think people are just in this, have an addiction to dopamine. So the phone is just a never ending distraction. And when we're constantly distracted, it's really hard to really even know how we're doing. And it's easier to push the pain somewhere further down the line so that we don't have to deal with it now, because I can just be distracted and think like everything's okay. I'll just keep watching another YouTube video, another reel, another post. I'll just keep and you just kind of never really move because you're pushing everything down the line. So really it's difficult to know how we're doing when we're distracted, but it's really difficult to hear God's voice if we're constantly distracted with what's going on in the world. I think being intentional about having times in our day where we remove distraction and when we're in the stillness, where we can learn to feel, where we can learn to hear, is so helpful. I remember I had a therapist once. I told you I used to go to therapy, drive an hour there, stay an hour there, come an hour back. And I used to say, when I get these emotions of like fear or loneliness or rejection, it's so overwhelming. I don't know what to do with it. And so I used to maybe relapse, or I used to do something I shouldn't do. And then he used to say to me, what you need to do is you need to sit there and not distract yourself. Face the emotion and say to it, I'm not afraid of you. And that was so terrifying at first. But the more and more I was able to stay in that stillness, the more free I became. And I think stillness, quiet, removing distraction is absolutely key for just a healthy soul, but also for the ability to hear his voice more clearly. And I think it's something that in our society as a whole, we really need to work on, because everything's attached to our phones, the busyness of life. But it's so harmful for our spiritual growth.
I think the one big emphasized key thing to take away from this is that stillness and that calm, because I actually feel so much comfort from just having this conversation with you, because it's a part of my life that I think I've struggled with so much recently, not only because of the podcast, but because of work, because of relationship, because of friendship, because of family, and actually giving the Lord personal quality time. Like I'll take out time in my day to call my friends, but taking time out, an intentional time out outside of my usual routine of morning and evening prayer, and just going, Lord, I'm going to give you this hour. I want to spend some time with you in this moment. Speak to me in this busy period of time I'm having, and allow me just to return to stillness with you is so important. And I think that's going to be so encouraging for anyone watching on here today. But Fernando, I have had so much peace from this conversation. I thought this conversation was going to go in a whole different direction, but I've actually come away from this with so much like peace in my heart, just focusing on that stillness and really just listening to the Lord. And I want to thank you so much for coming, and I would love to do this again.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. Our time's flying by, and I love you so much. And if there's anything I could ever do, I'd love to help in any way. I'd love to come back if you have me. But I'm sure you've got full schedule. So if anyone drops out, I'll come.
I really appreciate you being here, Fernando. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Pleasure.